Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm going to be walking you guys through how to make the absolute perfect chuck roast that you'll probably ever make, in my opinion. I wanted to make this video because for one, I'm making it for dinner tonight, so I figured why not show you guys how to make this. Probably years back, I started making chuck roast and kind of experimenting with different methods on making it, like the crock pot method. That was like my main way of making it. And I always found the meat to just be super tough, even after hours of it being in the crock pot. Something about the low setting, just boiling the liquid, and I think it just cooked too quickly. It just kind of left me very frustrated with the results. So I want to show you guys a super simple way to make sure that you're going to have the perfect pot roast every single time. So I'm starting with some grass-fed, grass-finished chuck roast. I have 2 packages, so this is about 4 pounds right here. Okay, so first thing first, we want to get these out of the packaging and generously season these with salt and pepper. So that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to go ahead and cut these open and season them very nicely with salt and pepper. Okay, so the method that I'm using that I found to be the most successful when making pot roast is Dutch oven method. So I have a cast iron Dutch oven. I'm going to go ahead and preheat each one to 6 while I season up my chuck roast. And I have my oven set on 300 degrees. Try to avoid getting all this juice on the cutting board. Just kind of pull it out. And there's 2 ways that you guys could do this. So you could either just sear it whole like this, which is what I usually do just to save time. But I've also done the cube method where you cut it up into cubes and then you sear each one individually, and that works too. It's just a little bit more time consuming. So if you're in a pinch, then this is definitely going to be your go-to method. We're just going to sear them whole today. Got a little bit of the juice on the cutting board. That's okay. Alright, so I'm just going to go right in with my salt, and definitely don't be shy with this part because this is going to add a lot of really good flavor. You know, these are really big pieces of meat, so you want to make sure that you season it very well. Make sure we get it all covered with a good amount of salt. I would say probably close to a half a tablespoon per side. And this is where a lot of the salt component is going to be coming from. So just add a nice bit of salt. And I promise this is a key step, so definitely don't skip on the salt. You can do a little less salt, but this is a key part of the flavor. So set that down, and then we'll go ahead and add on some fresh cracked black pepper. And I just like to press this into the meat, make sure that, you know, it really gets absorbed into the meat. All right, perfect. We're gonna go ahead and flip it over to the other side. I'm gonna wash off my hands. All right, I washed off my hands. Now we're just going to go right back in with some salt. All right. pepper. And for sanitary purposes, I'm just gonna put a little bit of oil in each pan before I press in the seasoning, so I don't have to wash my hands, because I just want to get this meat in here. Our pans are nice and hot. I'm adding about a tablespoon of beef tallow to each pan. Feel free to use any high heat oil. All right, you guys, so my pans are nice and hot. I decided to voice over this portion because it gets pretty loud with the pot roast hitting the sizzling pan. So I'm just gonna go ahead and lay those flat on the first side on each pan. And we are just going to let these go. I'm kind of just gently pressing it in with my fingers. So we're gonna let these go for about 5 minutes on each side. And so yeah, that's essentially what I'm explaining here. And we are looking for these chuck roasts to get a nice deep brown color on each end. This is going to be a crucial part in developing our flavor and ensuring that this meat is fall apart tender. It also may get quite smoky in your home. That's kind of what I'm talking about here. Unfortunately, in our apartment, our fan for the oven doesn't lead outside, so it's kind of useless. So it gets pretty smoky in our apartment, but I usually just crack a window open and turn on our AC, and that usually helps. So I'm just getting our cutting board washed off so that I can prepare some veggies on that while our meat is getting nice and brown. And while you could do this in the Instant Pot, doing this in the Dutch oven method, low and slow, really is going to develop that flavor even further. Something that you'll experience with the Dutch oven method that you just can't experience with the Instant Pot. So at this point, we're ready to flip. As you can see, it is gorgeous. That color is perfect on the meat. Perfect marbling. So just get a good look there. And that is the color that we're looking for. We're looking for a nice deep brown color. A bit of char even will be perfect. So onto the other side to go for another 5 minutes. And in the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and cut up an onion. Half an onion. And get that ready for when our meat's done. I can go ahead and get started on our braising liquid. So this method that I'm using in the Dutch oven it's a braising method. So essentially with this method, when you cook your meat low and slow, the steam that gets trapped into the Dutch oven is what causes the meat to tenderize tremendously. I mean, I'm not too sure about all the science behind it, but it definitely is an amazing magical thing that happens in the oven. So at this point, our meat is about done. So just got a plate to go ahead and set the meat on. Yep, that is perfect. So we're just going to transfer that to a plate and transfer that one as well. At this point, it was getting very smoky, so I had to take care of that. Okay, so moving our pot to the front of the stove. This is where I'm going to be preparing the braising liquid, and I set the other pan off to the side because that'll be our lid that we're going to be, of course, placing into the oven. So I am just preparing I've already diced up our onions, so those are in the pot. I've smashed a few cloves of garlic. I'm adding a bit more beef tallow to the pan. And we're going to go ahead and cook that down. So I usually keep it pretty simple as far as the braising liquid goes. Just a couple aromatics, a like the onions and garlic, and with the little bits on the bottom of the pan, that's just going to add a lot of flavor all on its own. And you could feel free to kind of mix it up here. So you can add in some herbs, you can add in some peppers. I'm about to add in a couple tablespoons of tomato paste here. I'm gonna add in a bit of coconut aminos, but feel free to use Worcestershire sauce instead if you have it. I just didn't have it on hand this day, but usually I would use Worcestershire. A bit of thyme leaves. I added about a half a teaspoon. Give that a good mix. And then I'm going to go ahead and fill up my pot here in a couple seconds with our beef broth. So that'll be the base of our braising liquid, what our meat will be cooking in and tenderizing in the oven, nice and slow. So, yep, I'm just adding in the beef broth here. It's just a beautiful color that you get. So, some hefty meat. Let me go ahead and add this back into our pot, nice and gently. Show is. And we're gonna add the juices back in there as well. We need a little bit more liquid, so I'm gonna kind of move our meat around, and then I'll go grab some filtered water and add that on top. All right, that's good. Just want it nice and snug in there. All right, so that should be perfect. It's not quite covering the meat, but we don't want it too high because we don't want it to boil over. Now I'm cooking it at 300, so shouldn't have to worry about it boiling over. But for the sake of just this pot, I'm just gonna leave it there. So I'm gonna go ahead and have this come to a boil. And as soon as it starts to bubble, we're gonna throw the lid on and we're gonna throw it into the oven for about an hour and a half, and then I'll take it out. I'll throw in my veggies, and then we'll throw it back in for another hour and a half, or until the meat is falling apart tender. All right, so it has come to a boil, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn off our heat. And with my mitt, because I know this is gonna be hot, I'm gonna go ahead and place this on top. And if you want, just for extra protection, you can put this Dutch oven directly on a baking sheet just to make sure it doesn't seep off into the oven. But I've found after making this a few times that even with filling the liquid up to that height, because it's on such a low temperature, I don't have to worry about that. So this technique is called braising. And so when you trap the steam in with this particular cut of meat, that is when you're going to experience the most juicy, tender, fall apart, magical thing that happens in the oven. So we're gonna throw this into the oven for an hour and a half. And as soon as I throw that in, I'm gonna go ahead and prep our veggies so that by the time that hour and a half is up, I can just throw them in and throw it back in the oven. Alright, so I went ahead and washed a few red potatoes and a few carrots as well. I'm just using what I have on hand, and then in this case I don't have any celery, but that's fine. If you have celery, feel free to chop up a couple of, excuse my baby in the background, feel free to cut up a couple of stalks of celery as well. I'm just cutting these in quarters, so I'm cutting it in half and then in quarters. Our veggies are all prepped. So by the time that hour and a half is up, all we have to do is just throw these in the pot, let it go for about another hour and a half. We'll check on the meat and see how it's doing. But this is one of my favorite go-to dinner recipes. It's pretty hands-off for the most part. Once you get the prep work done for the meat, throw it in the oven. You can just kind of forget about it. Take a few minutes to cut up and prep your veggies, throw them in the pot, and then forget about it again. So it's a very hands-off dinner in my opinion. And it's absolutely delicious. All right, y'all, so the timer just went off a few minutes ago. So I'm gonna go ahead and take our roast out of the oven. We'll see how it's looking so far. And some of the liquid is going to cook down. So you'll notice that there's going to be less liquid in there. Oof. Wow. So our liquid has reduced a little bit, but it's going to reduce even further as it continues in the oven. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab our veggies, or our potatoes and carrots, and just kind of layer them around, kind of stuffing them down into the liquid. Hopefully we can fit everything in here. Probably would be better if you had a Dutch oven that was a little bit bigger. But if not, if you're working with what I have, which I think it's a 10-inch Dutch oven, then probably just leave out a pound of the meat. I just wanted to get all this cooked. All right, I'm just gonna use my spoon and just kind of push them down into the liquid so they're all covered, so that way they can cook thoroughly for this next round in the oven. So we got our veggies in there. We're just gonna throw our lid back on. And back into the oven for about another hour and a half. The timer went off about a half an hour ago. After your timer goes off, after that hour and a half, shut off your oven and leave it in your oven for about a half an hour. And I find that this is really what is the tipping point to making sure that, sorry, making some brown butter. Kind of forgot. But that is to make sure that when you take it out of the oven, it is falling apart tender. So I am going to turn this down. I'm going to go ahead and grab it out of the oven and show you guys the final product. And that's the nice thing about these kind of recipes, because that leaves me with more time to be able to focus on other recipes while this is in the oven. So I'm about to make some sourdough chocolate chip cookies as well. And I did end up setting it on a pan because I heard it spilling over a little bit, and I had a feeling that it would do that because of the addition of the veggies. So I just went ahead and slid this pan underneath. All right, so let's go ahead and see how this turned out. I'm just gonna carefully take off our lid. Wow, that looks absolutely delicious. That looks picture worthy. Okay, yeah, that is nice and fall apart tender. But this is what you're looking for. It's not hard to pull apart at all. Dip it in the juices. Oof, and that looks beautiful. That looks perfect. All right, you guys, that does it. So that is how you make your delicious, fall apart, juicy, perfect every time pot roast. I hope you guys enjoy this video. And if you're interested in seeing more content like this from me, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Until next time, God bless.